Hey random stranger, we are covering something unusual today even for the anime world. So we're going to be listening to 3 songs from Revue Starlight, which I did not react to on my channel, but I did watch on my own. There will be spoilers in this, so if you haven't watched the show, please do. It will be so worth your time. A quick synopsis for those of us who have forgotten what this crazy show Revue Starlight is about, and I include myself in that because it has been a couple of years since I watched it. It follows these 9 girls at an elite theatre/music performance school. So think Juilliard or any sort of music conservatorium. They are all competing for a role in this prestigious play called Starlight. However, the twist is there are these underground auditions or reviews where the girls literally fight each other to win the ultimate prize of being crowned top star. Also, this girl fight club is overseen by a giant, creepy talking giraffe with a really deep voice and this insatiable appetite for drama. So each one-on-one battle is a full-blown song and theatrical performance where the characters express like their deepest fears and ambitions and conflicts with each other. So the music itself, and this is why I loved this show, becomes like the storytelling medium. In effect, it becomes the struggle itself, which I thought was really cool and kind of quirky. Even though it is a very fantastical show, the way that it conveys the struggles of pursuing a highly competitive art form was so real. Like it cut to the heart of what it means to succeed as a professional performer. The sacrifices that you have to make, the mindset that is required, or the tensions between talent versus effort and like conformity versus individual expression. Personally, I've only had a very small taste of like the super dramatic angst that you find portrayed in Revue Starlight. So I started learning classical piano at age 4 and then classical violin at age 6, and then was kind of really intensely in that world for the next 15 years. And as someone who had to push through certain barriers to do that, when you see these girls singing about this burning passion inside that drags you through unending darkness, you kind of feel it like deep in your bones. Okay, so the first song that we are going to be deep diving into is called, in English, Until the World is Turned to Ash, also known as the Review of Passion. Episode context. So the main protagonist, Karin, has just discovered this whole hidden underground theatre scene where everyone has been having these brutal fights. Karin, I would say, is very carefree, very loyal, a bit of a walking disaster, and is very unconventional in how she approaches performing. So she does end up shaking things up a bit in this very regimented theatre world. Karin stumbles in on a battle between Hikari and Juna, and yes, I know this screenshot doesn't look like they're fighting, but they were. Hikari is Karin's very talented childhood friend who has just come back from studying again in an elite school in London. And yes, they are the reigning gay couple of this show. But at the start, Hikari is very cold and distant, very on par for an anime girl with long sleek black hair. A huge driving force of this whole show is the fact that Karin and Hikari made a solemn promise to each other to stand on the Starlight stage as stars together, which leads to the central tension of the show. Traditionally, there is only one winner for these auditions, one top star. Can you then compete in this system while still preserving your close relationships with other people, or do you have to accept that the path to stardom is necessarily a lonely one? Meanwhile, Juna is like the archetypal hard worker who is desperate to prove that she deserves a place among all these other more naturally gifted girls. With that very brief context, let's get to the song, which we will listen to in full once, and then we can go back and dive deeper into some of the musical highlights. So that harp motif becomes important for later in the song. Clarinet or oboe? Please help me if you know. But yeah, just a very elegant instrument. 闇を咲き灯った激光が少女たちの活動を照らす Those snares kind of putting you into battle mode. And this string swell. Beautiful. See, the thing is, it's a very elegant sort of orchestration, even as the subject matter deals with some pretty gritty content. Yeah, I love those counter melodies played by like either clarinet or oboe. Kind of gives this whole song a very fragile feeling, even as they're singing about how determined they are to pursue their dream. That's beautiful phrasing in the strings. Like the swell. Like, these girls will fight to the death, is the point. And it's like, you kind of need that to death mindset when you're in this sort of environment. There we go, acoustic guitar for the first time, along with the harp as well, so there is some continuity, but again, it's a very new sort of texture, because this is when Karin jumps in. And she's not meant to at all. See that super acceleration and the BPM. Man, she's just like ripping up the playbook. And the tempo changes again. Karin is like really, I don't know, she kind of just throws a stick of dynamite into the mix just to see what happens. And musically, I love that it reflects that too. So now you have like the strings and all the rest of the traditional orchestration, but along with this like wailing electric guitar. So there's a few musical highlights I want to go back to and talk about in more detail. First off is when Hikari and Juna begin their duel, we are in C minor. That key choice carries a lot of classical baggage that I can't help but feel was very intentional. This is the first ever song that we hear that exposes this whole cutthroat world of auditions, so it had to set the high stakes, very dramatic tone for the rest of the music to come. And C minor was the key to do it. During the classical period, so prior to the early 1800s, composers rarely used C minor. And when it was used, it was reserved for works that were particularly dramatic and very emotionally charged. Mozart, for instance, only composed a handful of pieces in C minor, but they include some of his most intense work, like his Mass in C minor. But it was really Beethoven, and I feel like I mentioned Beethoven at least once a week on this channel, but it's true, it was Beethoven who laid claim to the key of C minor as expressing his own personal artistic struggle. According to a couple of music historians, Beethoven linked this key specifically to pathos, struggle, and expressive urgency. The Fifth Symphony, and again, I've mentioned the Fifth Symphony across multiple anime reactions. I don't know why, but there you go. The Fifth Symphony is the ultimate example of this. You know, its famous 4-note opening, the bum 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 bum, also known as the fate motif, after being described as like the sound of fate knocking at the door, bum 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 bum, was deeply personal for Beethoven. He composed it while battling increasing deafness and depression, and it was a statement of his resolve to overcome his struggles through his art. And I love this detail that in a letter that he wrote to his family, he said, "I will seize fate by the throat. It shall certainly not bend and crush me completely." That kind of spirit is what Hikari and Juna represent in this scene, and really all of the girls in their respective reviews. They are artists who deliberately choose the more difficult path of struggle over and above the path of easy mediocrity. They are also trying to seize fate by the throat. And that's why I don't think the use of C minor in this very first review was accidental. It signals that these are girls who have embraced suffering as the price for greatness, just as Beethoven did. The instrumentation in this first section reinforces a classical foundation beautifully. You know, you've got these very elegant harp arpeggios that form the harmonic backbone, while what sounds like a clarinet or a very haunting oboe leads the main counterpoint parts. And then, of course, there's the strings, just kind of filling out this very lush, traditional orchestral texture. The tempo is at a very moderate 120 BPM, you know, and both Hikari and Juna are singing in this very controlled, precise way. There's no rushing, there's no hesitation, just a steady pulse of very disciplined artistry. But then at 2:34, Karen literally crashes the party, and the key suddenly changes to D minor here. So D minor and C minor aren't directly related to each other, but they do share 5 out of 7 common tones, which creates that subtle but a very meaningful change in terms of harmonic gravity. By repeating the motif we had at the beginning and shifting it to a different but not too distant key, Karen basically takes the same musical material as Hikari and Juna, but recontextualizes it and shifts the whole emotional landscape. The instrumentation shifts dramatically too. You know, the harp is still there, which I think is important because it's like Karen respects the musical foundation that came before her. But now that harp motif is doubled with an acoustic guitar, which felt like Karen literally bridging the classical tradition with something more contemporary and more accessible. What's great about Karen's musical characterization is how it captures her rebelling against the established rules of this underground review world. So the tempo here, it drops to 112 BPM, as if the music is trying to accommodate this disruptive new voice. You know, you can't exactly go back to the 120 BPM. But then Karen can't be contained within these traditional structures. So the moment she starts singing and barges into this fight, there's this immediate acceleration to here, which is like 160 BPM. To someone like me, whose repertoire included a lot of pre-1800s classical music, where generally the music maintains a steady tempo, it's a bit of a shock. It's also kind of funny because it was like Karen could not find and keep the original tempo, and kind of then just decided to create her own musical reality. The breaking of established musical parameters like this mirrors the rules that Karen breaks in the show. First, you know, the rule that only special chosen students get to participate in these auditions. She literally crashes a fight she was not invited to, probably because up until that point, she'd been a bit of a slacker and not someone you would envision making it to the elite level. Second, she eventually refuses to accept that you have to sacrifice your personal relationships to achieve individual artistic success. If you've watched the anime too, I also love how it's at this point that she jumps into the fight by launching herself off the giraffe's neck. In true rebel style, she literally steps on this rigid authority figure, I guess, to launch her career with no regard for etiquette or tradition. It's also interesting to compare the nature of the dissonance used in the Hikari Juna section versus Karen's section. Dissonance refers to combinations of notes that create tension in the music that then demand resolution to more stable, more consonant harmonies. So in this Hikari Juna section around 204, you can hear that dissonance in the string arrangement, but it's a very classical type of dissonance in the sense that there are carefully crafted tensions that overlap and clash in the different parts, but then resolve at different strategic points. It's like controlled chaos. It's purposeful, it's elegant, and it's ultimately resolved. But after Karen enters, around the 3-minute mark, her dissonance is of a very, very different character. Like, she's hitting these very bold, unison chromatic notes that you would be very hard-pressed to find in traditional classical repertoire. Chromatic just meaning these are notes outside of the key that we're in. Karen's musical language is like immediate. You know, it's raw and sounds kind of technically unrefined, but she does bring something that years of formal training can potentially erode in an artist. And that is spontaneity and just her emotional rawness. For example, kind of just compare like the 25-second mark, right? Karen sings this too. So the way that both Hikari and Jonah sing those eighth notes, it's very like smooth classical phrasing. Whereas if we go to 258 where Karen sings the same phrase in a different key, it's almost like a bull in a china shop. Her pulsing, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da is so frequent and what in classical tradition would be considered as a bit amateurish. But somehow it's exactly these rough edges that give Karen that spark of authentic expression. So at 3:18, the song reaches its, resolution. All of the instrumental parts combine together at a solid 124 BPM, kind of like what I thought was a compromise tempo. That's almost like Karen found a way to work within the existing system while also keeping her individual pace intact. It's not the measured 120 BPM at the start, but nor is it like the absolutely chaotic 160 BPM. It's a speed and also an instrumentation because you have like the traditional orchestra plus the electric guitar that incorporates both old and new approaches. Overall, I think this song reflects the show's broader themes about artistic pursuit, particularly in the classical and the elite performing arts world. The opening section with Hikari and Juna feels representative of students who go into these prestigious performing arts schools with their own unique voices and bucket loads of talent and a very deep passion for their art, only to then be kind of processed and systematically molded into these technically perfect, stylistically polished performers. Whereas Karen represents the tension between that kind of institutional excellence on the one hand and authentic and spontaneous creativity on the other. I think by the end of this song, there's a hint that maybe the best way to navigate that tension is to find a balance between preserving technical skill while also making space for the individual expression that really gives art and music its heart and soul. The second song that we're going to be looking at is Koi no Makyuu, or Love's Wicked Pitch, which takes place in episode 5 during the Review of Jealousy and is a duet between Mahiru and Karen. Mahiru is from a small rural town and is not very confident in herself. So it was a classic case of big fish in a small pond finds herself outclassed by other big fish in a bigger pond. But she'd kind of found a niche in looking after Karen, in being responsible for her and making sure she got to class on time. And yes, also being madly in love with her. This song is basically Mahiru's unrequited yearning for Karen expressed through a baseball-themed fever dream. It represents her emotional breakdown after Hikari shows up and Karen suddenly rediscovers her passion for theatre and it feels like she doesn't really need Mahiru anymore. But because Mahiru can't deal with the loss of her disaster, not actually her girlfriend, this song is her reminding Karen that she won't let anyone else have her. So for a lot of it, Mahiru is running after Karen with her mace, being like, "Don't worry, Karen, I won't hurt you." It's ever so slightly and adorably psychotic. It's very dramatic and threatening. But then I love how they added like hints of, wait, what's going on? I thought this was going to be a typical dramatic classical orchestration. It's so weird. It flips around so much. Ooh, those dissonant strings. I love how it just lands in this like swing jazz, playful kind of tune. Oh, so this is the part where she's kind of like play acting both her and Karen's roles. Yeah, definitely giving off like crazy obsessed girlfriend vibes. But you still love her. I think the first impression I got from this was like, man, this is such a cool, like jazzy, playful kind of song. Paired with Mahiru's very reserved personality. At first, this kind of seems disjointed. But then you realize like she's play acting out all of these fantasies in her head, these childlike fantasies of what her relationship with Karen should ideally be like, and then it kind of makes more sense. Nice. Yeah, there's not a lot of dramatic strings going on in this one. I mean, there are elements of drama in this for sure, but it's just very jaunty as opposed to, you know, melancholic. Yeah. The lyrics definitely, and the music too, reflect Mahiru's kind of crazed mindset. And the key changes flip a lot as well. Like, we're now in E flat major, whereas before we were in C minor. And there's another key change, back to C minor. She's like, I love you, Karen, even as she's like smashing Karen with a baseball bat. I think that kind of like crazed personality flip, it's really reflected in how we keep constantly changing between the C minor and its relative major, the E flat major. And then there are these darker kind of moments as well. Of course, that's where the strings come back. Man, that piano is going hard. Alright, Karen's like, I need to kind of stand up for myself. And for Hikari. The swing beat on this, even though it is just in 4/4 common time, it really matches how they're singing about going round and round in this match. And you kind of feel bad for Mahiru. It's like she staked everything on Karen, and Karen being there next to her forever. That's great how they stripped the instrumental out for this part. Yeah, and their voices kind of sound really similar when they sing in unison like that. Things that stood out to me musically in this one was, of course, first off, that the song starts in C minor with this like very super dramatic orchestral opening that screams, "This is serious." So remember how we talked about the weightiness of the key of C minor? But instead of staying in that sort of intense mode, the introduction bounces between playful and then dramatic again, before it then finally settles into this more like playful jazzy groove. Bum, 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 bum. So that descending chromatic bass line, the brass and that improv piano gives the song a very sophisticated, very confident noir jazz-like quality. By contrast, the visual elements aren't so sophisticated. You know, they're whimsical and childlike and cartoonish. There are cutouts of Mahiru's fantasies, Karen's being baseball batted into a pinball machine. So I really liked how the juxtaposition between the music and the visuals mirrors someone like putting on a confident facade while dealing with some internal complex struggles and self-confidence issues. The other way that the song reflects Mahiru's emotional turmoil is through key changes, which I kept mentioning when we were listening to the song. So while a lot of the song is in C minor, like here, it will from time to time switch to the parallel C major. Should be coming up here. C major there. And then C minor here again. The whole C minor and then to C major, then back to C minor motion creates this emotional whiplash between Mahiru's very surface cheerfulness versus like the underlying sadness she feels inside over the whole Karen and Hikari situation. And there's just more and more key changes. So here, the key changes to E flat major, and then suddenly everything just kind of sounds brighter. But even then, the piece keeps slipping from E flat major back to C minor. After an octave jump, it goes back to C minor. There's definitely another key change. E flat major. Similar to the C minor, C major, C minor, C major thing, constantly alternating between the E flat major and its relative minor C reminds us that underneath all of that playful energy is genuine heartbreak. It's like when someone tries to convince you and themselves that they are totally fine when they are clearly not fine. I also really liked the detail of that octave jump that Mahiru sings. E flat, E flat. So immediately after that dramatic jump up to the high E flat, the instrumentation shifts back to the C minor, leaving the previous E flat note sound weirdly unresolved. So to me, it's the perfect musical metaphor for Mahiru reaching for something that she ultimately cannot have. It's also at this moment where Karen is reminding Mahiru that she also has something special too, you know, even if her particular shine or uniqueness differs from the other girls. And as Mahiru kind of processes what Karen is telling her, interestingly, the composition moves through a series of very rapid key modulations right here. There's key change there, key change there. Moment of realization, and then they sing in unison here. I did really like how that emotional breakthrough of Mahiru realizing that she doesn't have to tie her own self-worth to anyone else culminates in both her and Karen singing in unison in the E flat major one last time, like they've reached some sort of mutual ground and a more positive, healthier understanding of who they are to each other. However, the song ends in C minor with Karen performing this octave leap. C, C. After Karen's octave jump, that's the final resolved note. Unlike Mahiru's earlier leaps in the E flat major, which were then immediately destabilized with a key change to the C minor, Karen's version actually lands somewhere very stable. It perfectly symbolizes her role in helping Mahiru find emotional stability and self-acceptance. Again, like every musical choice in this song serves a story. The constant key changes track Mahiru's very fragile emotional state. The jazz elements reflect her attempts to kind of make light of her very deep hurt feelings. And then that final breakdown that stripped away all of the instrumentation was also like the moment where her pretense kind of just fell away. Plus, it's genuinely catchy, which is impressive for a song that is essentially about deep identity crisis packaged in unrequited lesbian love. The third and final song is Recreate, or The Review of Solitude, sung by Hikari and Nana, more commonly known as Banana. On the surface, Nana is friendly and supportive, and she is, but she has also been secretly manipulating time, trapping everyone in this time loop of their first school year where they performed the Starlight play for the first time. And in her mind, she's preserving that perfect moment where all the girls were together and achieved peak performance and happiness. So it's a fear of change and of graduating and losing all her friends that makes her want to keep everyone trapped in the eternal present. Ugh, the strings kind of breaks your heart a bit. Ooh, very nice. And then kind of like a very subtle vibe shift. Because you've got the synths added now. I actually really like Hikari's voice. There's like a maturity to it. If you haven't noticed, we're in a very weird time signature. I mean, relatively weird. It's at 7/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I do love how Nana makes fun of Hikari's very small sword. And Hikari's like, it doesn't matter. We're in 6/8 time now. I do love how this show kind of throws like curveballs at you. There's like 9 cute girls and almost all of them have some serious, deep, like psychological trauma. But hey, this is elite performing arts school. You wouldn't expect any less, to be honest. Beautiful solo piano. Just when it looks like Hikari is about to lose. Hikari third. Nice. Oh, I loved how they did that key change. We will cover that later. Nice. Oh god. Yep, Revue Starlight is at its heart the ultimate love story. Okay, this is Hikari trying to break out of that, loop through her memories of Karen, I guess. If you haven't noticed too, like we have switched not just key signatures, but time signatures as well a couple of times at this point. And yes, we will also talk about that too because it's significant. Bit of a decelerando. And then music box music. Just at this point where, you know, Hikari is really holding tight to her childhood dream with Karen. Tremolo to up the drama. And now we're solidly in 4/4 common time. None of that weird 7/4 time, 6/8 time, 6/4 time. Solid 4/4 time. We've got that like snare drum back, like that battle snare drum. But then it kind of just drizzles down into this more... It's actually a very simple melody relative to everything else that's gone before. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. There's a very forward momentum in that kind of rhythm that Hikari is singing. Again, apt. Because she's like singing about moving towards and forward with Karen. Oh my god, I love this one. Yay! It ends with music box and piano solo. Both things that Hikari, well, I guess is a motif for Hikari. This one played with time signature and key signature changes to convey conflicting character motivations in a major way. And I guess all Revue Starlight songs do that to some extent, but this one was a standout in how it used the music to reflect that push and pull between Nana's desires for repetition and staying in the present versus Hikari's drive towards growth and forward momentum. So the song starts in common 4/4 time, again with the very typical classical orchestral textures and sound. And as in other songs, this is the established order, you know, the familiar ground that Nana desperately wants to preserve. But at like 29 seconds, the music shifts to this 7/4 odd time signature with modern synth sounds added and like a very driving percussion beat on every single beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/4 is an inherently unstable time signature. It disrupts our expectation of musical regularity because it's one beat short of 2 whole bars of common 4/4 time. In other words, we expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But 7/4 time kind of makes us skip a beat because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's off balance and it's the musical embodiment of change forcing its way into established patterns, which is a great musical metaphor for the unwanted change that Nana desperately tries to circumvent by constantly looping back to the past. Adding modern synth elements alongside the classical orchestral instruments also reinforces that theme. You know, electronic sounds from the present literally intrude on the traditional orchestral textures of the past, just like how reality keeps challenging Nana's nostalgia for the past. So around here at like 1:25, we shift to 6/8 time, just as Nana sings, I bid farewell to a world revolving in sorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The choice of 6/8 time was apt. You know, it has that waltz-like swing that feels very cyclical and almost hypnotic. It is effectively Nana's time signature in that it represents her desire for endless, kind of sad but familiar repetition, and her willingness to trap everyone else in that repetitive cycle. But then at around like 147, a subtle but important change happens. So we moved from 6/8 time now to 6/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, what is the difference between the two, 6/8 and 6/4 time, and why is it important? In 6/8 time, there are 2 strong beats per measure with triplet subdivisions. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It kind of swings and it flows. But 6/4, by contrast, feels like 6 distinct quarter notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a lack of that triplet subdivision. It's much more deliberate and forward moving. There's no swing, there's no circular motion, just measured progression from one beat to the next. The fact that here we escaped the 6/8 time into 6/4 time, I think reflects how Nana's attempts to preserve her time loop is being challenged and transformed, notably by Hikari. The music refuses to keep swinging in those comfortable 6/8 circles and instead insists on moving forward with purpose. And then here around like 205, the time signatures go nuts. And I don't know if I'm going to try and determine exactly what's going on because I might drive myself nuts. Okay, we'll just give it a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know, 8.5, 9.5. I don't know. So after 1 bar of 6/4, 1 bar of 4/4, 1 bar of 5/4, it kind of just goes off the rails. There's this sudden syncopation, meaning things kind of go off beat, and everything shifts forward by half a beat. So it's kind of really hard to determine where the beat falls, which throws everything out of whack. At first, I thought this might be a reflection of how there's this intense battle raging between Nana's weird time signatures, like especially her 6/8 time, and how Hikari is trying to establish her 4/4 common time. But it's also because of Karen. The fact that she is on screen during this wild bouncing around different time signatures every bar fits to a T, given how she's the character who represents unpredictability. You know, the wild card who disrupts everyone's carefully laid plans just by existing. And then here around 2:15, everything is stripped down, leaving us with a beautiful, tragic sounding piano solo. And we are back in 6/8 time, so Nana's territory. Again, appropriate because this is the moment where it looks like Hikari is about to lose to her. I think the melancholy of this section also highlights the tragedy of Nana's character. Her love for her friends was twisted into something possessive and ultimately harmful. She was so afraid of losing them that she deprived them of their very agency and of opportunity for growth by keeping them trapped in a time loop. The key changes in this song are also equally deliberate and reflect key story moments. So it does start in E flat minor, which has a relatively complex key signature. It's got 6 flats. Speaking as a violinist, it's much more annoying to play than other keys, so it's uncommon for this key to be used in classical repertoire. Again, I don't think that choice of E flat minor was accidental. Using a key like that mirrors sort of the narrative complexity of the conflict that is playing out between Hikari and Nana. The key of E flat minor also sets up a contrast for the moments where Hikari starts to assert herself more. So around here, when Hikari reminisces about her childhood, there's a key change there. You know, she's thinking about the promises she made with Karen, and the music has shifted from the complex 6-flat world of E flat minor to the much simpler key of A minor. And it did that by pivoting via a pickety third that lifted the music momentarily into E flat major before landing in A minor. You could say that going from the E flat minor to the A minor was a harmonic sleight of hand. It was like Hikari breaking free from Nana's convoluted loop and grounding herself in a key that is more honest and direct. A minor, while still being a minor key, has no sharps and no flats, so it is way more accessible and I guess in this context, more innocent sounding and feels like coming home. It's Hikari choosing clarity over complexity and drawing on the power of the genuine memories that she shares with Karen over the more manufactured nostalgia of the past that Nana is offering. Actually, this whole reminiscing part was very romantic, and it only gets more romantic because if we keep playing, at around 3:05, we get another key change, and it is to the C major, the relative major of A minor. And this coincides when Hikari sings about how Karen has unexpectedly changed her life as soon as they made that commitment to each other, and how she has to fight on for Karen's sake. It's like the ultimate love serenade. It's definitely like Tied by a Red String of Fate type romance stuff. Why is Hikari singing this in C major a significant thing? C major is the most positive sounding, most accessible key in Western music. It is literally the first key that beginners learn on piano because, again, it has no sharps or flats, just like A minor, because obviously those two are related keys. You can play it without any training, so it is the perfect key to represent like the pure, uncomplicated nature of Hikari and Karen's childhood promise to each other. And then like we go through a series of shifts between Nana's like 6/8 time here, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and also Hikari's more simple 4/4 common time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice as we switch towards the more simple 4/4 common time, it is also again where Hikari is reminiscing again on her childhood with Karen, and also is where we get the very childlike music box type music. So the final section brings everything together beautifully. You know, around 4:52 is when Hikari declares that her and Karen's dream will live on. She slows the tempo and then shifts definitively into a triumphant 4/4 common time once and for all. There are victorious bells ringing or wedding bells, probably both, and it feels like something momentous and ceremonial is happening with like the rapid strings and then the marching snare drums. I really like how 4/4 time came to represent Hikari's childhood commitment with Karen. Whenever the piece returns to common 4/4 time, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, often with a very forward driving momentum, the instrumentation evoked a sense of childhood memories too. As we pointed out, it was when we got the music box music and like the more simpler, more positive and innocent melodies and orchestration. And to top all that off, all of that is happening in C major, the beginner's key, which stands in stark contrast to Nana's sections that were dominated by E flat minor and odd or swing time signatures. Yeah, this was another great storytelling song. You know, this is the musical thesis of Revue Starlight itself. That growth and change don't have to mean abandoning what we love. Hikari shows that you can honor the past while still moving forward towards a brighter future. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. And if you have any other Revue Starlight songs that you'd like us to explore in the future, please let me know in the comments. I really enjoyed going back to these because the rich orchestration and the arrangements really speak for themselves in terms of what story they are trying to tell, and that's one of my favorite types of music, to be honest. Until next time, take care.